It's Power Hour LSU.
The last three national champions didn't play a Power Four program outside of their conference. And going to 9 conference games, that changes the dynamics a lot. So we need to take a look at that and study it. In fact, I just sent it to the SEC Commissioner's Office, talking about, do we really have to play a Power Four opponent with the 9 conference games now? Do we still need to do that? So we have to give our teams and our conference the advantage to playing in that final championship game. You know, in the last 3 years, we haven't made it to the final game. So something is there with that. When the last 3 national champions didn't play a Power Four program outside their conference, we need to take a deep look into that as a conference to where we are. So does it make sense to still play the Clemsons, the Ohio States, the Notre Dames, the UCLAs, the USCs? Does that make sense still? So we need to take a look at that as a conference and figure that out. But the home schedule is great. It helps us with the ticket demand, as you say. But we have to also start realizing, too, what's going to happen in this new model. And we don't really know. There's a lot of uncertainty to that, to figure out how we want this to look and how we go further with football scheduling.
You don't need to take risk, unnecessary risk, is what
That's
you're
correct.
saying.
Let's get into it. Give me your best. Let's go. You guys know, more than film, more than recruiting, more than anything else on the planet Earth, there is nothing more I love to discuss more than college football scheduling. It is the bedrock of everything in the world of sports. Why is the NBA a mess? Because they have an absolutely terrible schedule. Why is college football great? Because we have a wonderful schedule. Now, the format of the scheduling isn't really that great, but we have a scarcity of games that makes all the games really valuable, even in an expanded playoff. So Verge Osbury, this seems like this is something he wanted to get out. Obviously, he has known Jacques Doucet for a very long time. I've known Verge for a very long time. I've interviewed Verge twice as a student media member, and he has done really good things. I have grown on his idea of the SEC not playing an out-of-conference P4 game, because I do think the SEC had no choice but to add a 9th game to its conference schedule. I truly do believe it. The schedules were too imbalanced. We weren't playing all the other teams in the conference near enough. And now you're going to play every team in your own conference once every 2 seasons. And you're going to play, obviously, 3 teams once every season. And for LSU, that's Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. So for the out-of-conference P4 game, there's a few things you have to consider. And I guarantee it. We're going to get into Jordan Seaton. We're going to get into LSU recruiting, to me, the single most important player for the 2027 recruiting class. And it's not someone that I normally would say. It's not a position that I normally would say. Then, of course, one of my favorite Twitter follows on the planet, my guy Bappa, tweeted out, who is the all-time best LSU number 7? We'll discuss that a little bit later in everyone's favorite segment, What Did Lane Tweet Today? So, look, I just simply do not care about the college football playoff in terms of moving things around just for the sake of the college football playoff. Because the reasoning that Verge has behind moving things around and softening our schedule is simply because of the college football playoff. His direct reasoning there was the last 3 national champions did not play a P4 out of conference game. What he failed to mention, though, is Miami played 2 out of conference P4 teams. They played Florida, and then, of course, they played Notre Dame. And that Notre Dame win was a pretty big deal for them to actually get into the college football playoff. So, for me, I've always stood fast on what I truly do believe. If you are good enough to win a national championship, you are able to overcome some of the schedule inequities that comes with playing a 9-game SEC conference schedule and adding an out-of-conference P4 game. I simply don't like softening schedules just for the sake of playoff positioning. And I understand that Verge is looking what's out, looking at what is best for LSU. I get that. And I understand the Big Ten doesn't have that requirement. I understand the ACC conference schedule. They are moving to a 9-game conference schedule. 12 of the 17 will play a 9-game conference schedule. And the next year, 16 of the 17 teams will play at a conference P4. Once again, the ACC really does screw a lot of things up in so many different ways. But, for me, I'm open to it for this reason. Normally, the out-of-conference P4 game that you do play is played at the beginning of the season. Only 4 teams play an out-of-conference P4 game late in the year, and that's because of their long-standing rivalry week games. So you guys already know who those schools are. It's Florida State and Florida. We know Georgia plays Georgia Tech. We know South Carolina plays Clemson. And we know Kentucky plays Louisville. So they already play an out-of-conference P4 game, and they do not have to meet the requirement because they already have one, right? Obviously, we have to go out and schedule these very difficult opponents when it comes to P4 out-of-conference games. What I don't like about them is they're always played at the beginning of the season, and we're not getting the best of those teams at that juncture of the year. But I simply don't want to remove playing those really fun opponents simply for the sake of better playoff positioning. However, my position on this does change because I do like having a 9-game conference schedule. And if you truly do believe it is such a massive inequity for us having to play an extra conference game and us requiring ourselves to play an out-of-conference game, I am fine with exchanging that for a cupcake opponent. I'm fine for it. I can live with that. But I don't agree because I do think if you're good enough to win the national championship, you're able to get over the hump and find a way to get it done with a more difficult schedule. Remember, we are the SEC, where everything just means more, except when it comes to playing more difficult opponents, right? Now, it just depends, though. If you're at home and you are thinking that the SEC schedule is that much more difficult than that of the Big Ten and that much more difficult than that of the ACC and the Big 12, most schedule almanacs that actually do schedule rankings, whether it's someone like Bill Connolly or Andrew Percival on Twitter or whoever it may be, if you do believe the SEC schedule is that much tougher with the 9th conference game, then get rid of it. All right. For me, though, I just like to focus on what we can control, which is who we have on our schedule. Okay. We say hi to Keith. We say hi to Alex, your very own 80. Well, look at that. Right on cue. We played it just a minute ago. Rob wants to talk about the favorite number 7, Trev Falk. Your favorite was Patrick Peterson. And Who Dat Fam says, tell that to Indiana. They had a soft-ass schedule. Yeah, I do think, though, if we are to go to a 24-team college football playoff, there are no excuses when you have a 10-game P4 schedule. There's no excuses at all. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, I mean, if you're good enough, you're going to win it all. Now, if you are of the idea that the only thing that matters for LSU is to get into the playoff as many times as we possibly can, then Verge is correct. If that is what you want out of your college football world. But I understand whether it's the 8-game versus 9-game. We did a ton of polls on this, and 4 out of every 5 of you wanted the 8-game conference schedule to stay. And obviously, now that Verge, who I like, our athletic director, now that he has said what he has said, I think a lot of you are going to go in line with him. But for me, if we're going to go to 16, which is inevitable, that's even more wiggle room to lose that game, whether it be Clemson or SMU or whoever else we have coming up. We have even more wiggle room to still get in. And then obviously, you have this require Notre Dame to join a conference. I'm definitely down. Should there be financial rules for college sports? I don't know. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, earlier break than normal. Wife says there is an emergency. So I'll be right back after this.
Let's go! On a journey together with Zion Imaging, I want you to see this experience up close. And me as a wedding and event DJ, I watched how everybody had so much fun with Zion Imaging. And a big reason for their success is the team. Yes, Jaron Thomas and his family started this off as a passion project, and they have one simple goal in mind: taking your event to the next level. Whether it's a wedding, reunion, quinceañera, school, or corporate event, Zion Imaging is all about family-friendly fun. And I gotta show you on this tour the high-level technology that quickly sends your video session to your phone, whether it's iPhone or Android. Yes, it's the Zion Imaging 360 spin booth experience, serving North Texas, North Louisiana, South Arkansas, Orlando, and more. Give us a call, 318-469-4265. Check us out on Facebook or book us at Zion Imaging, XYAN Imaging.com.
All righty. So everything's good. It was Harry Styles' album release date, and my wife was freaking out because apparently the song just came out. And I'm a big Harry Styles fan, but it's not as important as Lane Kiffin and my LSU Tigers and talking about scheduling. But I understand. Everyone else that does LSU YouTube stuff, they disagree with me on this. Okay? Most people that do this kind of stuff, that cover the SEC, they disagree with me on this. But I'm just telling you, I am not one that lives my entire life around making the playoff. It's just not that important to me. Now, do I want LSU to make the playoff as many times as possible? Sure. But I don't want every decision that we make come down to the college football playoff and maximizing our chances of getting to the college football playoff. I enjoy college football for its regular season. I don't want to take Clemson and SMUs and all of that off the schedules. If we schedule Ohio State down the road, I would love to go to the shoe. Okay? But obviously we're in a changing landscape, and my final position still remains the same. I don't mind trading a ninth conference game for getting rid of out-of-conference P4s altogether. Now, let's get to Jordan Seaton. This is obviously something that was passed out today by a fake reporter that Jordan Seaton's uncle wants him to go to Oregon. You know, today is the last day to register for classes. This has been a pretty dramatic situation. As you can see, Jordan Seaton understands the leverage that he has, and obviously entering the portal later in the cycle at the single most important position in the transfer portal, which is offensive tackle. I understand quarterback is more important, but offensive tackles are a far more scarce resource, and you need 2 of them on the field at one time. And he understands that he is flexing his transfer portal power more than any player we've seen in transfer portal history. And the price just keeps going up. Is he worth $4 million? That's, a you decision. 3 or 4, whatever the number may be, that's a you decision. Here's what I could tell you. After making a few phone calls, and I shared this a little bit earlier in the Discord, I am not insider Pete Nackos here. LSU has done everything that they could do as far as appeasing him, all the way to where Lane is flying to Atlanta to meet with them. Dan Lanning obviously did the same thing. Obviously, Miami is in this as well. Could it just come down to who is going to add an extra 200, 300, 400, 500K? Sure. But I will tell you, until I am blue in the face, that it is worth it. I do think he's great. I do think we have massive holes still on our offensive line. I do not want to go through another year of the Weston Davis experience, even if he is better, which I do think he'll be better with the better system and some new eyes on him. I don't want to go in knowing that is, right now on paper, one of our starters on the offensive line. And there are other players that I like. Darren Stray is interesting. William Satterwhite is interesting. Jaquan Sprinkle comes over with a lot of experience. I mean, there's plenty of guys to like. I've shared plenty of times that I think Aluba is good enough to play in the SEC. But, this is a different caliber of player. And I do think if you have spent this much money into this team and this roster, and you're really putting pedal to the metal for this next year, I do think it's worth just paying up and just getting it done. Okay? I really, really, really do believe it. All right? So there you go. Now, is it going to happen? I still put LSU. I'm still around LSU at 60%. I would say it's 60 LSU and then, or if you want to go 50 LSU, 25 Miami, 25 Oregon, sure. But at this point, even the people that do just this for their livelihoods, they would tell you, but they don't know. We have all shared the same talking point that this was the last day to register for classes. Maybe he already registered and it is in this course. But I will say this. As far as fans complaining about tampering and all of that, there was no bigger example of tampering than the Cal linebacker that Ole Miss went and got out of the portal that was already committed and basically signed with Clemson. Okay. So Ole Miss fans have, bickered about LSU with Daugherty and obviously with Prince Will. And they go get this linebacker who was already at Clemson, pretty much all in on going to Clemson, and they're able to get the job done. All right. This is a free for all. I listened to an interview that Josh Pate did earlier today with the great Rich Eisen, who I respect dearly. And Josh Pate said that there's still 1,200 players in the transfer portal right now without homes. 1,200 players. Like, really think about that. 1,200 players. If you were to divvy this out, 1,200 players in the portal, y'all, that is essentially what? 9, 10 full rosters of players just chilling. Some with bad advice, some it's on the players themselves, whether it's their parents or their camp, if you will, their position coaches, head coaches changing, whatever. This is a wretched, broken sport. College football. There's no uniformity. There are no rules. We have seen what happened today with Darian Mensah, which is still the biggest story in this sport right now. What are you going to do about it? College football. There's no grown up in a room. There's none of that. None of that. Okay. So for me, if you're an LSU fan looking at this right now, your issues with the transfer portal is everybody's issues with the transfer portal. And it sucks. It really does suck. I can't state enough how dumb this sport is. And the dumbness of the sport is what makes the sport so great. Okay? Julie, thank you so much. Yes, it is indeed my birthday. It's tomorrow. But we probably won't be live tomorrow. Or I don't know. I want this to be crystal clear, though. I'm not going to Fayetteville this weekend for the LSU Arkansas game. I'm not. I'm so sad. And it's probably for the better because I don't know if I want to see Matt McMahon's team in person right now going up against arguably the best team in the conference. But that's about where we are right now with the sport. Let's go to Keith 995 LSU Saints Cubs. I wish the P4 conferences would make their top 4 teams play and send the 2 winners to the college football playoff. So how would that look? I'm serious. How would that look? You would have a top 8, and then those top 8 would send the winners, and then they would play a 18. I don't know how that would work. I really don't. But you run into issues with that. What would you do with the ACC in that scenario? Seriously, what would you do? Would it be Miami and Duke, who are 7-5 this year? I don't know if the ACC can do that. I don't know if the ACC can field 2 good enough teams to get in. And at the same time, it goes back to the very beginning. How do we know as the SEC that we're the best conference? We're so much better than the Big Ten or whoever else. What if the Big Ten comes out and says, you know what, SEC, we'll match you. We will guarantee that every team in our conference schedules an out-of-conference P4 game. Appreciate the birthday wishes. Thank you so much. All right. Now I want to get into, to me, the single most important story as far as Lane's recruiting today. Lane was out there. There was a lot of motion today. As we're trying to figure out what's happening here with Jordan Seaton, the LSU coaching staff had their boots on the ground, yelling, "Where them fans at?" You don't have to worry about LSU fans. We're everywhere. And we know your every move, Lane Kiffin. We know where you're going because you post for all of us to see. Lane went to all the big New Orleans Catholic schools today. The entire staff has been on the road, whether it's Joe Cox or George McDonald or Charlie Weiss. And then, of course, we know the GOAT recruiter on the staff, Corey Raymond. He's been out there getting work in. They have been out there. But I'm telling you right now, the best player in the class of 2027 is not Peyton Houston. Love me some Peyton Houston. Glad he's committed. Looks like he's going to be our quarterback for that class. We need a good one, and he's a pretty doggone good one. Just telling you right now, Easton Royal is the real deal. So LSU goes and visits him. Brother Martin, wide receiver. Brother Martin, of course, has produced their fair share of LSU and Saints players. We'll clap one of them off the top of the dome here. But, y'all, Easton Royal is sincerely insane with the football in his hands. Literally. He is crazy, crazy, crazy good. Think early Doucette, but better. And reminds you a lot of early Doucette. He is truly that good. He plays wide receiver, and obviously a wide receiver, it's not the single most important position for LSU when it comes to recruiting pretty much ever because, we normally figure it out. But, the backbone of this LSU program has been built on the backs of Louisiana wide receivers. It's been our strongest position, arguably, over the past couple of decades, and we want to continue that. And it's great that we brought in all these productive portal receivers that are really good at running deep routes and choice and all of that. But Easton Royal is good at everything. This is a true kid with great burst, can play all the positions, get him involved on end arounds and quick screens, and he is good enough to contribute as a true freshman. And I do put him in that tier of must-get recruits, even though there is no such thing as a must-get recruit. Now, is he Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, Malachi Toney, true freshman good? I don't know if I can go that far, but he's pretty good. And obviously, this young man is committed to Texas. We do not want that. Do not want that. Do not want to be going up against Easton Royal on the 40 acres. Okay. But, Lane and them, this is an uphill battle recruiting in the city of New Orleans. Now that Frank Wilson, of course, is at Ole Miss, and Texas has their fair share of Louisiana natives on their staff. It's going to be really hard. Texas has done a good job in this state. Ole Miss is going to try and dig their heels in themselves. But for me, out of any player in the class of 2027 that I want, it's Easton Royal. He's the best I've seen. Okay. And I would be shocked at this point if he's not an all-conference player at the very least. Now, here's the thing. It's class of 2027. Hopefully some rules have changed by then. Hopefully we have a better understanding of how high school football recruiting fits in the grand scheme of all of this. But this is a 5-star wide receiver. There's always room in your budget for an in-state 5-star recruit. Okay. But he is committed to Texas. It's going to be very difficult. He is simply incredible. Okay. Let's go to American Patriot. He says, I can't stand players like Seaton. They're a cancer and will cause havoc in our locker room. Have his uncle go kick rocks, essentially. Not how I feel. I'm serious. And I am oftentimes of that belief. We don't want to, overextend ourselves and, be held hostage by one player. But this is a different beast here because the production you're getting, it's probably going to be really good. And it's at a position where you have massive holes. Where are the holes on this LSU roster? Well, it's not a quarterback, not a running back, not a wide receiver, not a tight end, not a defensive line, not a linebacker, not at safety, not a corner. It's tackle. All right, you can piecemeal some offensive guard play together, and you have Braylon Moore coming back. This is one of those instances where you just have to say, hey, all that culture stuff be damned. We have to do what we can to get this kid in here. All right. So I get it. You're not the only one that feels that way. All right. And I think as far as Jordan Seaton is concerned, he understands that, right? He's going to be coming in with a lot of fanfare and as much pressure as any offensive tackle to produce ever, really, knowing what it's going to take to get him. But LSU has proven time in and time out that money is not an issue. There's no school in this conference that has spent quite like LSU in the portal this cycle outside of maybe Texas. And you have to do what you have to do to shore up your offensive line. This is the single position on your entire team. Okay? You don't have staff. You don't have holes on your staff. You don't have holes anywhere. Everybody's getting paid well. If you're not willing to go a few extra million for a guy that's going to be on the field for more snaps than anyone else on this team, then what are we doing? Let's go to Cliff. But I get it. AP, you're not alone. You're not alone. Let's go to, he says, I was really worried about losing Frank Wilson at first, but now not so much. Yeah, this is just the simple truth when it comes to recruiting. You simply cannot just get caught up into any one coach truly moving the needle for your program outside of the head coach and maybe your coordinators. There will never be a staffer, an assistant coach that truly makes or breaks your recruiting at any one school. Normally the brand and the 3-letter brand at LSU is so strong is what is always going to recruit your school. And then obviously the bag is going to recruit your school more than anything else now. So, my position was, we should heavily consider keeping Frank Wilson. But at the same time, Frank could still love LSU and Lane still have respect for Frank. now that he is at Ole Miss and Lane is at LSU? Now, BT says Corey Raymond, and Corey's a great coach. Corey's an absolutely great coach. You're right. But did the LSU defensive back room just completely fall off a cliff when he left? No, not really. I mean, we still had semi-decent corners in the first couple of seasons. We didn't have them. But Corey Raymond's a great coach. He makes us better. Okay. Now, coming up next, everybody's favorite segment in the history of LSU YouTube. Let's go.
Power Hour Network listeners and viewers, you might be consuming this content with that crick in your back that you've been trying to get rid of for so long. Take this as your sign today to book your appointment with LabordeTherapy.com. In the Lafayette region, there is no one that you will find that cares more about any different type of pain that you might have than the team at LabordeTherapy.com. Book today. Once again, that's LABORDE Therapy.com, or you can visit one of their 5 locations all throughout the Lafayette region.
All righty. What did Lane Kiffin tweet today? Once again, big thanks to our friends at Laborde Therapy and LabordeTherapy.com. Please, if you have that crick in your back, or if you have that leg muscle that's not cooperating, just check out our friends, Thomas and his staff at Laborde Therapy. 5, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 different locations all throughout South Louisiana, including Karen Crow, where Kev Falk is from. Speaking of Kev Falk, how about a LSU legendary running back that is not talked about enough, Mr. Joseph Adai. His son has been offered, and Joseph Adai gets the retweet, or our guys at All Things Go. We've had All Things Go on a few times. And we're going to play this Joseph Adai run. Full screen it. Mickey Joseph. Yeah, Mickey Joseph was a great coach. A lot of respect for Mickey. And the car loved Frank Wilson. Yeah, of course. And I still love Frank. But there was a change. And look at this truck stick from Joseph Adai. Boom. Nasty work. And obviously Adai went on to the Indianapolis Colts and played with the great Peyton Manning, my GOAT. And there you go. Joseph Adai. Still crazy. Jalen Adai. Also a basketball player. God, genetics are great to have. Jalen Haywood, big offensive lineman, gets the visit here from Eric Wolford. All right. 3-star. So let's get to this segment right here from Joel Klatt that Lane calls rat poison.
At number 8, I've got to go with LSU. While the exit from Ole Miss was messy, Lane Kiffin is basically guaranteed to have a great offense, something that was totally lacking at LSU a year ago. They were 103rd in scoring offense, 111 in total offense, and Kiffin's going to come in and he's going to turn that around right away. And listen, he's operated out of the transfer portal every year anyways. So the fact that he's bringing in 35 transfers doesn't scare me at all. That's normal for Kiffin, in particular because he got his guy at the most important position. That's Sam Leavitt, widely considered, I think, the best quarterback in the transfer portal. They get him from Arizona State. Guy has playoff experience. He's won a Big 12 championship, took Texas to the brink in that playoff game. I love that get from them. And they're going to have more wide receivers. They got Jace Brown from Kansas State. You get Eugene Wilson III from Florida, good players. They got a couple of really good defenders out of the portal as well. Edge player Jordan Ross from Tennessee. So again, like And LSU is not done. They're probably going to grab a couple of more players out of the portal. I love the SEC opener, by the way, at Ole Miss. Sign me up for that one.
I love that hoodie, too, from Joel Klatt. Rose Bowl is the peak college football atmosphere. There's nothing like it. There's Lane Kiffin saying it's rat poison. LSU and Lane Kiffin are making waves with elite recruits via Sam Spiegelman. Lane Kiffin retweets his board of approval. The biggest brand, Flage, come to LSU and be a star like Flage. LSU women's basketball tonight versus Texas A&M. They are 30-point favorites, apparently, versus the Aggies. I read that somewhere. Crazy. I will be tuning into that one. There's a great Simone Augustus getting interviewed. Keep it going. AJ McCarron gets the good luck from Lane Kiffin. AJ McCarron is the head coach of the UFL Birmingham Stallions. Crazy. Lane Kiffin's takeover of Louisiana recruiting is just getting started. And there he is. Lane Kiffin with Easton Royal. I love this photo. Lane Kiffin pointing at Easton Royal's records. You can see Easton has both of the outdoor track records for the 100-meter and the 200-meter. 10.30. That is truly crazy. Just for reference, Caden Durham ran a 10.29 100 meters. So that's how fast that young man in the photo actually is at Brother Martin. Easton Royal is a big-time recruit. All right, we get this tweet right here from Lane Kiffin at Edna Carr High School. Archbishop Shaw. Shout out Ryan Clark. And, well, you guys know that. St. Aug, Leonard Fournette. We keep it going here. We already went through that. I got Mike Scarborough. Chuck's way too early, top 25. He has LSU at number 9. Okay. Joe Cott's visiting what looks to be Milton High School. I didn't know it. I just pulled it up. I don't know where this is, where Lane Kiffin is visiting, but that's a pretty bizarre image. It looks like it's Jared Leto in a Mardi Gras tie. Looks like it's some kind of downtown area. I don't know what that is. I'm guessing it's somewhere in the 504. Okay. And then we get to here. I knew we were going to get to this at some point. Who is the best LSU number 7 of all time? Bappa, my favorite LSU follow on Twitter. Jordan says Tyrann Mathieu. All right, so there's a few caveats to this. Are we only including the years that they wore number 7? Because for Tyrann, obviously, that was only in 2011. He wore number 14 in 2010 because Patrick Peterson was still on the team. I will say Tyrann Mathieu had the best season. He is the only one here that was a Heisman finalist, even though I think Leonard Fournette should have been a Heisman finalist in 2015. Okay, so Tyrann Mathieu is the only Heisman finalist you see. Patrick Peterson got close his final year, but there you go. Obviously, Grant Delpit's kind of underrated. The only national champion you see here, obviously, Allie Highsmith won the Natty in 2007, but you also see Will Campbell here. The reason I'm going to go Patrick Peterson is a few reasons, all right? And by the way, I should include this as a caveat. Of these 6 players on your screen right now, the only one I've talked to extensively is Patrick Peterson. All right, so I understand there's a little bit of bias that creeps in there, but Patrick Peterson was an elite player for all 3 years when he was at LSU. How many of these guys can you truly say on your screen right now was elite for all 3 of their seasons at LSU. The only other one is Will Campbell. All right. Leonard Fournette had a slow start in his true freshman season and a Les Miles offense. It's not his fault. Let's put too much on this young man, and I've gone on that rant a few times. And then obviously in Fournette's final season, he got hurt. But Patrick Peterson played in every single game he could have played. Started the number 7 tradition here at LSU. Then, of course, Patrick Peterson is the one that really started pushing the DBU mantra. Now, were there great defensive backs before Patrick Peterson? Sure. Corey Webster, Tommy Casanova, whatever. But the truth remains the same. Patrick Peterson was elite all 3 seasons. Great punt returner. But of these number 7s, Matthew was a better punt returner. I'll give him that. But, we didn't get that final season of Tyrann Mathieu. So then it gets into like simple counting. Do you prefer 3 elite seasons over 2 elite seasons? So that's where I give the edge to Patrick Peterson. And then obviously Patrick Peterson was a mentor to that of Tyrann Mathieu. So the best season was Tyrann Mathieu's 2011. And then I would say Leonard Fournette's 2015 is the second best season. And then obviously Patrick Peterson's 2010 is the second best. Okay. I would guess that he does, Pegasus, considering he retweeted this. Rondell Mealy. So I tweeted this out that the number 7, who was the highest LSU number 7 draft pick, was not included in this graphic. And it's not Jamar Chase, and it's not Derek Stingley Jr. I think you guys, if you're a deep cut, you might know who that is. But you guys let me know, who is the best LSU number 7 of all time? We continue. Lane Kiffin calls for peace between the LSU and Ole Miss fan bases. So, has the LSU versus Ole Miss rivalry become too vitriolic between fans? Yes, it's become a little too vitriolic. I will also say, and this is very biased, and that's okay, but the vitriol from fan bases come from the burners, all right? And if you don't know what a burner account actually is, it's simple. It's an account that pushes things on social media, but they don't actually show their face. The Ole Miss burner community is the worst burner community. Now, there's some bad LSU burners, sure. But the Ole Miss burners, ooh, they'll start attacking you personally. When we played Ole Miss earlier this year, before the Lane Kiffin stuff got started, the only fan base that repeatedly made Kyron Lacy jokes was Ole Miss. No other fan base on that we played. Not A&M, not Arkansas, not Alabama, Ole Miss. So, yeah. Do we want peace? I don't know if we want peace. And I'll tell you this, I don't know if the SEC wants peace because it's drumming up a lot of interest. But yeah, it has gotten pretty gnarly. So Leavitt State University, we've shouted them out a few times. With today being the exactly 5-year sober day, he says, I agree with Coach Kiffin. Every facet of your life becomes better if you become sober. And Lane Kiffin put this on his Instagram story. So obviously, I partake in an alcoholic beverage every now and then. And some of you watching this, you're a bourbon collector. I know Cliff is. But always drink responsibly. If you truly believe that drinking is a problem, then you should quit. And there's a lot of vices that have been a problem for a lot of different people. We probably all have one. But congrats to anyone on here if you've gone through sobriety. Awesome stuff. Okay. Jaquan Sprinkle, offensive lineman. I was speechless at first when he first saw Tiger Stadium. Coming from an HBCU, it's definitely something different. I was getting chills there with an empty stadium with the videos and the lights, so I can't imagine it when the stadium is packed out. All right, so here's Lane retweeting the official announcement for Prince Will signing with LSU. Here's Trey Moore, a 6'4" wide receiver, tweeting out his visit here with Charlie Weiss. 6'4", man, that is absolutely massive for a wide receiver. Here's Lane Kiffin with a few top wide receivers here. Miguel Whitley and Raekwon Williams. Love to see it. St. Aug. Pflugerville. Trey Moore, how about that? Okay. Here's Eric Walford with 5-star IOL, interior offensive lineman. Top 10 prospect Albert Simeon. Yeah, so there was something, I'll address this, the drunk coach Baker, Blake Baker, it's kind of a burner. This is what, Lane Kiffin was saying about stopping the peace or whatever. And I'm with it. I mean, I try not to get vitriolic with the Ole Miss fans, but, sometimes it does get personal. Prince Will using the VR goggles at LSU. Love to see it. LSU now has the #1 portal class. That was from earlier today. And there you go. That is what is Lane Kiffin tweeted today. Let's see if there's anything else on the docket. No. So there you go. Burt Jones, one of my favorite Tigers. Yeah, my old schoolers. Burt Jones was the 1.2 by the Baltimore Colts back in the, what would that be, the 70s? Late 70s? I don't remember the year, but he was a 1.2. LSU has had 3 #1 overall picks, but none more #7. That was Jamarcus Russell, Joe Burrow, and Billy Cannon, who wore 4, 2, and then Joe wore 9, and Billy Cannon, of course, wore 20. Okay. Yeah, one of my really good friends is really good friends with Burt. They're hunting buddies. Just saw him recently, actually. Not Burt, but my friend who's good friends with Burt. And there you go. Genuinely good dude. Now, here's what we're going to do. In the next 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to answer as many questions as we possibly can. If you super chat, we'll keep this party moving. There will be a birthday live stream of some sort tomorrow. So be ready for that. Hopefully it's a Jordan Seaton celebration. Let's go to Desmond's Cash App here. First time, long time. What coaches can recruit off campus? Basically, all of them can. You're a position coach, yes. God. Now, a few things. LSU is going to be in every top 10. which is strange because normally we're in that, when it comes to preseason rankings, we're in that 12 to 15 range. I think for me, we are going to be a top 10 team next year. I've already talked myself into it. This roster is pretty stacked, and the coaching is going to be better. And it's hard for me to look at what we've done in the portal and then not say that we're going to be better. And our reinvestment into not only this roster, but the coaches that we already had here. Keeping that defensive nucleus there together. Are there some concerns? Yeah, every team's going to have concerns, especially in this portal era. But, I keep going back to how the schedule actually shapes up for LSU. If they can develop some type of ground game, this sets up nicely. It really does set up nicely for LSU. I think A&M's going to take a step back. I think Kentucky's going to be sneaky. The one big question for me is I'm not necessarily worried about the offense. Going from a team that was so bad offensively to next year being good in the run and the pass. I don't put anything past Lane Kiffin, but there's going to be some growing pains there. But the one thing that we do know from the last 4 seasons of LSU football is that you simply cannot stop the QB run game. And next year, the roster is once again, or the schedule is loaded with rosters full of mobile quarterbacks. And it's going to be tough. Ole Miss, Deuce Knight, or Trinidad Chambliss can run. Texas A&M, Marcel Reed can run. Kentucky, Kenny Minchie can run. Mississippi State, we'll see what this Kamario Taylor injury looks like, but he can flat out run. Byron Brown of Auburn rushed for 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. And if you want to know more about Byron Brown, I dropped a 40-minute film study on the Power Hour SEC channel. I love me some Byron Brown. Alabama's going to have dual threat capabilities. Arch Manning can move. Arkansas obviously will take a step back. They have mostly pocket guys as quarterbacks. We'll see what happens with the Tennessee QB room with George McIntyre. So we end the season with, some lack of mobility at the quarterback position. But if we could fix that, watch out. All right, let's go to Desmond. He says, I thought I counted more than 10 position coaches hired. That's why I asked the question. Okay. Let me go back to... I don't think they have... Actually, hold on. You might be onto something here. Desmond, I'll look into that. It is interesting. But yes, there are quite a few assistants. I don't know exactly how that's going, how that actually works out. So it's a good point. But I do think they have made some changes to that. Ryan Brown says, all hail the portal king. Let's go to Cliff. How will Blake Baker adjust to a more up-tempo offense? I think he'll adjust hopefully fine. The one thing that I feel is going to be more important for Baker is he is going to have a defense playing with a lead. Where I'm always going to defend Blake Baker, because at times I was pretty critical of him. He had so much stress on his defense at all times when you're never scoring north of 25 points in any game. I just think it is hard for even a god-awful offense to not at least luck into scoring 25 points. But it didn't happen until the Houston game. And yeah, we technically scored 25 versus A&M, but that last touchdown was garbage time, where we had 18 points going into half. So, it's going to help out Blake Baker a lot. It's going to relieve the stress. Something else that made life very difficult for Blake Baker is there just wasn't a great pass rush out of a 4-man alignment. It just wasn't something that existed. Jack Pyburn was a phenomenal player for us, but he's more of a run-stuffing defensive end. He would get pressure, but couldn't quite get those sacks. Patrick Payton was mostly a disappointment. We thought he'd be a little bit more of an edge bender. He is a good player, though. Bats a lot of balls down at the line of scrimmage. We got no pass rush from our defensive tackle room, which just wasn't that good of a room this year. And so much of our defensive success was our DBs being amazing. You give Corey and you give Jake a lot of credit. A.J. Halsey was as good as it gets. And then obviously Mansour Delane was the best corner in college football this past year. So, one thing that's going to help Baker out quite a bit is the pass rush with 4 men is going to be a lot better. Okay. No, that's I don't. Yeah, that kind of floated in the back of my mind because there were so many new additions, on the coaching staff, right? Because, it's kind of a weird dichotomy because normally your offensive coordinator is also a position coach, right? So normally you're the offensive coordinator and you're also the QB coach. But that's not how LSU operates. It's a very fragmented, fragmented's not the right word, but it's a very divvied up coaching staff, right? You have, your head coach and your coordinators, but then you also have a quarterback's coach, a tight ends coach, an offensive line coach, and so on and so on. All right. So there you go. Let's go to BT. Coach Kiffin seems more in tune with the LSU SEC culture and recruiting than Coach Kelly did, with no slight to Coach Kelly. No, that's a lot of slight to Coach Kelly. He was very laissez-faire with his recruiting. Now, the truth, though, is the recruiting classes were still good under Coach Brian Kelly. They're still good. But he made some very gross miscalculations, and it cost him. All right, so a good example of this is the 2024 team. That was a good team. 2024 was a good team on offense. But on defense, he could have done more. But he went into 2024 with the mindset of Ashton Stamps, a year 2, 3-star corner, can be an every down player in the SEC. It's not a good mindset to have. It's not. So one thing that's going to be very different with Lane Kiffin is with going into the portal, you have more certainty at every single position. Every single position group brought in some adults that's going to challenge the status quo at LSU. And I feel like we didn't have enough of that. Obviously in 2024, and it got better in 2025, but you get the picture. All right, let's take a few more here. Wide receiver play will be night and day better than last year, not even close. I agree. I'll defend Coach Hankton and LSU there to a certain extent because you can't really do anything with what happened with Aaron, and we weren't the same team without Aaron. And then obviously your wide receiver play is heavily affected by Garrett. It's also heavily affected by your offensive line play, and it's heavily affected by your coaching staff and your rotation. And I do think there's just going to be so many things night and day better with last year's team to this year's team because you're massively upgrading at every single position from last year's team to this year's team, which is shocking. Literally every little aspect of offensive theory, whether it's the players, the coaches, the concepts, the play calling, the sequencing, all of those things is massively upgraded. There's literally not one thing, really think about that. There's not a single thing from last year's offense to this year's offense that is not getting upgraded. Like, I wish there was a small fraction of something. The only thing I could think of is like a 5-tool guy. We don't have a proven 5-tool guy like a Xavier Thomas, if you will, who could just do everything. And then you lose Aaron, of course. And, Garrett was once good. But, God, everything is just that much better. Everything. And if you guys can come up with one thing that we are going to be better at, or that we were better at last year to this year, let me know. Will we have a better right guard than Josh Thompson? We'll see. Okay. All right, let's take a few more here. Once again, big numbers for a Thursday. Thursday is normally a night that lags a little bit behind, especially with no new news. Wide receiver screens. Hank didn't do anything with Chris Hilton. That was on him. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Chris Hilton had 5 years to produce, and he couldn't get it done. Whether that's health or bad luck or I don't know. One of you guys sent me this. Jay Bilas went on a show. Let me see. I'll play the clip. I'm just putting this. I've not been able to watch it. Hopefully, it doesn't have any cursing or anything crazy in it. Jay Bilas taking a shot at Lane Kiffin, apparently.
Time in basketball where those in charge haven't been complaining about it being fucked up. I'm not happy with everything that goes on in basketball, but what I will tell you is I would rather have these young people have choice than be restricted. Does anybody find it interesting that Lane Kiffin leaves a team that is going to the college football playoff and not one coach and not one administrator came out publicly and said, what about loyalty? What about this? What about that? They didn't say any of the crap they say about the players. The sitting administrators and presidents and all that didn't say a word because they feel like they're going to be in that situation at some point and they don't want to lock themselves out of doing what LSU did. I don't believe for 1 second the complaint that there's no loyalty anymore. Like, was it loyalty when we couldn't move?
Is he? Do people? We can just make stuff up now. Like, literally. People can just make stuff up. Politics, entertainment, sports. You would think in the social media age, we would be smarter people. But now AI's here. Like, we can just make stuff up. Wait, there wasn't a coach or an administrator that didn't call out Lane Kiffin? Well, yeah, you could make a case that there wasn't a current one that called him out because, well, they're looking after their own hide. They can do that, right? But, yeah, there was plenty of people that was calling out Lane Kiffin, though. The idea that he did not take blowback. Yeah, he took some behind the scenes. Sure. Lots of coaches took their shots at Lane. Not publicly. Coaches publicly rarely take those kinds of shots. But it's like he just said that to generate buzz. Well, I mean, what is Jay Bilas smoking? What? And as if Lane was the only coach that did that. And he's talking about, well, players shouldn't be allowed, players shouldn't be criticized for something. Yeah, they should. Sure. I mean, Clemson has every bit of reason to be angry about what happened today with them and Ole Miss. Same thing with Duke and all of that. Damon Williams, who we were after, signed. You signed the deal. Honor it. If not, get bought out and we'll bring you over. It's just wild to me. Absolutely wild. All right. And I talked to a lot of people that work in the industry privately about this. And yeah, it's crazy. But if Jay Bilas can't separate that we need some rules into this, then guess what? If we don't have better rules, we're going to continue to have 1,200 players still in the transfer portal, which is what we have now. There are 1,200 players just floating out there. Like, they're literally floating. They have no homes. Literally, their feet are off the air. Their feet are off the ground. They're in the air. It's crazy to me. Where did I get this sweater? Believe it or not, all right, my aunt gave me this, so I don't know. She got it for herself, and I was like, you know what? I've always wanted a cardigan, and she gave it to me. My aunt TT. But what is Jay Bilas talking about? All right, y'all. That'll do it for me. Great show today. I do want to end on this. And this happens. Stuff that I'm really passionate about, I reflect. I look at your comments. I look at the tweets. I look at some of the messages that you guys send me. And as far as the situation with the Verge calling out the out-of-conference P4 schedules, I've grown on banning it. I've grown on his position. I have. I still stand by what I say, that I don't want to get too caught up in what all the other teams have to deal with. And if you're just joining us, Verge Osbury, we led the show with this. If you want to hear the clip from Jacques Doucet, he said we really need to consider banning out-of-conference P4 games because the SEC schedules are so much more difficult. And this was actually an Ole Miss fan that tweeted this to me. He said, go look at the Notre Dame schedules and go look at Texas Tech's schedule. And he's right. Texas Tech's schedule next year is soft. It is really soft. Notre Dame's schedule next year is softish. It's soft compared to what most of the SEC schools have to play. The problem with releasing this, though, is the SEC has so much bad publicity right now. This is the worst publicity that we've had in a long time as a conference, okay? All right, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom. Tonight, we're doing burgers. Let's go. Big thanks to our top super chatters, Keith, Brian, LA Mom, and the great Desmond. We appreciate it. Tonight, oh yeah, we already said we're doing burgers. Let's go.